When you think of ancient Rome, what or who do you think of? Emperors such as Julius Caesar or Octavian? Buildings such as the Roman Colosseum? Or even odd and strange practices like gladiators fighting to the death simply for pride? Well, what do you think of when I say Catiline? Ring a bell? Lucius Sergius Catiline was a conspirator of a great big plot to take down the declining Roman Republic near the middle of the 1st century BC. You'd think by doing so he'd be remembered by a lot more people, right? Well, the only reason he's probably not is that his plot failed and he was caught. Come along, I'll help you understand the man behind this conspiracy, and how and why it failed. Catiline was born sometime in 108 BC to a rich patrician family, whose last family member to be a consul died over 200 years earlier. This made Catiline's dreams to be a politician take over any situation, so that nothing would stop him from reviving his family's political and economical power in Rome. He was also a very good army officer around 90 BC, what is now referred to as the Social War, and battled along with such people as Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, who would go on to become one of the greatest Roman military leaders of all time. Although his military record was pretty strong, he still got into quite a bit of trouble after said war was over. From 68 to 67 BC, Catiline became governor of Africa, in which he was accused of mistreating African citizens, which disqualified him in the annual consular elections in the year 66. In the election of 64, Catiline was beat out for the position of consul to a man named Marcus Tullius Cicero, who you'll find more about in just a little bit. This defeat angered Catiline, thought it was unfair that he was being rejected as a consul, as it was his lifelong dream. So he tried to make sure he won in the 63 BC election in what he assumed to be the best way: bribery. The consul at the time, Cicero, caught on to Catiline's plan for power, and then distributed a law that forbade this technique. Catiline was furious with this act, and plotted to get his revenge by murdering Cicero, along with some other prominent senators, on election day. The plot was discovered by Cicero, who in turn postponed the election to talk about the attempted rebellion with the rest of the Senate. Cicero spoke to the senators, who then passed a Senatus Consultum Ultimum to Cicero, which granted him the power to handle the situation. The election was held a little while after, and Catiline lost once more. This had been expected by Catiline's supporters, and they started to form a tough force, an army, if you will. This time, the planned defiance went a little deeper, but had a similar outcome: murder as many senators as possible, while setting fire to Rome. As the conspirators gathered more and more people for the plan, Cicero was doing some dirty work of his own, and by collecting letters that were written by some of the conspirators to Catiline, Cicero gained enough evidence to be able to alert the public of the oncoming danger. Cicero called a Senate meeting in the Temple of Jupiter Stator, a building that had been standing since the very beginning of Rome, on the 8th of November, 63 BC. Catiline, surprisingly, was in attendance for Cicero's denouncement of him. When Catiline took a seat in the temple, the senators moved away from him, separating themselves from the man accused of serious crimes against the Republic. This is depicted best in Caesar Macari's famous 19th century painting, Cicero Denounces Catiline. The first oration, or speech, is still remembered today as one of the greatest examples of oratory writing, especially for its rhetorical and sarcastic phrasing. The first 3 lines are probably the most remembered of the oration, reading, "How long, O Catiline, will you abuse our patience? How long is that madness of yours still to mock us? When is there going to be an end of that unbridled audacity of yours? After the oration had been given, Catiline started to reply to the fierce accusations thrown at him, but was drowned out by the other senators, who were now calling him a traitor. He then abruptly left the city en route to the growing army's camp. After the dust of the first oration had settled, Cicero gave another speech, his second oration against Catiline. While he was doing such, Catiline and the leader of his rebel army, Manlius, started planning. The Senate once again found out about this and decided to take action. They were able to follow Catiline on his trip, and in doing so collected confessions from a few of the conspirators. Said conspirators were soon sentenced to death by Cicero and strangled without a trial. These deaths completely broke the core of the conspiracy, and many left Catiline's army, leaving him with only a portion of what he had before. Cicero found out the army's whereabouts and sent armies led by Antonius and Metellus to trap him. Trying to make a quick escape, Catiline's army fled through the Apennine Mountains, but Antonius and Metellus soon surrounded his depleted army. Largely outnumbered, Catiline knew that his army had no chance. He called a meeting of his men and gave a speech encouraging them to fight bravely. And then the battle began. The two armies of Antonius and Metellus marched into what they thought would be a rather quick and easy fight, while the army of Catiline and Manlius prepared for their last battle. The fight began soon after, and to say Catiline's army went down easily would be an astonishingly big lie. The 3,000 or so men in the rebel army fought very bravely, none of them deserting their cause. Catiline ran straight into the combat, with a sense of courage he hadn't possessed in quite a while. When the battle was over with, Catiline's rebellion had perished. Not with fear, not with cowardice, but with pride. News that Catiline, along with the rest of his army, was dead spread through Rome like a tsunami. The public rejoiced at this news, for they had been living in fear of a rebellion for months now. They hailed Cicero as a hero for saving Rome, and it appeared as though Cicero would leave the office of consul with a great reputation behind him. But one thing stood in his way: the Roman law. The law system of the Republic stated that every citizen of Rome had the right to a trial. When Cicero had the few conspirators strangled in early December, he didn't give them the chance to appeal. Rather than go through a trial of his own, Cicero left Rome in exile. Even though his character was a bit more tarnished, Cicero remained a great influence on Rome. The Catiline orations proved to be some of Cicero's best work, if not that. His style became a standard in Rome, and continued to be the norm of Latin writing until the Roman use of the language ceased near the end of the Roman Empire. Although Cicero wasn't the hero he was earlier, the Senate was able to regain power that had slowly been wearing away. This brought a new outlook to Rome, increasing the people's confidence as well. This new confidence would only last a little while, as years of war and conspiracies soon took Rome and transformed it into an empire. Catiline faded out of the infamy he experienced when the conspiracy was at its peak, and was later regarded as a horrible man whose search for power was fueled by his rivalries and hatred of the Senate. But now, some modern historians have been able to view Catiline and the conspiracy through a new perspective. He's not exactly regarded as a hero per se, but not thought of as a corrupt villain either. And even though his plot failed, he still had a major impact on Rome. For you see, Catiline was not just a rebel or a renegade. Those words don't give him any justice. No, Lucius Sergius Catiline was a revolutionary.